Hi, this is Michael Cohen. I'm an elder law attorney and estate planning attorney here in Dallas, Texas. I'm joined by my friend and cohort and podcast partner, Don Crawford Jr., who's right there. He's raising his hand. I'm not sure if he was being sworn in or
No, he's
he's going to tell the truth, nothing but the truth. I'm pretty sure by his raising of his hand. There's lots of other people that are Don Crawford that we weren't sure about.
right. I know
So
Jeffrey Epstein's and Michael Cohen's too. There's
right. So yeah, today's topic is about Jeffrey Epstein, the notorious Jeffrey Epstein, that we all have heard about, that's been in the news lately. So the question is, what about his estate? Will this be affected by the possible release of his files? There's also a Finance Committee of the Senate is also investigating because there's some questionable actions that were taken during his time for what he got paid. And so now the question is, will that affect his estate? So let's talk about a little bit about what did he do before he died and how big was his estate and what happened to the money so far. First of all, the size of the estate was $600 million, a lot of money. And so, of course, a lot of it has been going to other creditors to pay bills. But let's talk about what he did. 2 days before he died, he said, first of all, he said he was a resident of the U.S. Virgin Islands. And he did a new will and revocable living trust 2 days before he died. Presumptively, for privacy reasons, you have a trust for privacy reasons and also favorable tax treatment. I think we did a podcast on, and remember we taught a podcast several weeks, well, maybe a month or two ago, about the famous Barneys, where they had the person that was the grandson of Barney. Well, actually, the I guess you'd say daughter-in-law, because the son died of Barney's, had a large estate, and she had home in both New York and in Florida. And in Florida, they have more favorable tax laws. So there's no state estate tax and no state income tax. So similarly, the Virgin Islands is more favorable than New York. So in this case, he said he was a resident of the U.S. Virgin Islands. He actually owned two islands in the Virgin Islands. I mean, we're talking a lot of assets. And so uh, after he died, uh, then of course, there's, as we all know, the victims, the young women who were the victims of his crimes, sued. And it was pretty easy one way or another to uh, reject what he had done as far from a legal standpoint in a couple different ways. First of all, if you have either existing claims or creditors and you put assets into a trust, that would be considered what's called a fraudulent conveyance. Even if it was an irrevocable trust, his was revocable.
no,
But even if it was an irrevocable trust, if you know that you're being sued or you have been sued, you cannot protect your assets by fraud.
I'm glad
And
to hear
that's what he tried to do.
that.
Number two, let's say he had it done and he had all these assets. He had properties in different parts of the world and different states, as well as being in having residence in the U.S. Virgin Isles, or at least supposed residence in the U.S. Virgin Isles. Um, well, was there enough time with $600 million of assets to transfer the funds into the trust? Now, I don't know. Maybe there was or maybe there wasn't. But typically, when you have a trust, a revocable trust, you have what's called a pour over will. It pours over into the trust, which means that if you didn't get a chance to put everything in there, the will is probated and then it's transferred to the trust. But what does the will always say? The executors have the duty to pay off all the bills first. So he had to pay, and his biggest creditors were they had a some sort of a victims fund for the sexual abuse for his trafficking, which paid well over $100 million. And then also the U.S. Virgin Islands, he had used different techniques to get more funding on different things, and he misled for different financing, giving different tax incentives. The estate settled for over $100 million to the U.S. Virgin Islands for his fraudulent activity there. You might say also, how did he get his money besides what we think he was doing? And that is he was giving estate and tax advice. He's not an attorney or CPA, and he was paid very dearly. There was a Wall Street billionaire whose last name was, well, I think his name was Leon Black,
Mhm.
where Black, without any contract, gave Jeffrey Epstein $100 million to save him on taxes. Now, and not all of it was even, some of it's pretty common stuff, and other things might have been unique, and some things were, quite frankly, wouldn't work.
Right.
But it's what's interesting, and there's the finance committee of the U.S. Senate Finance Committee is saying, "Hey, IRS, why is it that you didn't audit these people who paid millions and millions of dollars, which is far more than reasonable compensation, I would say, for his services? Was there an obligation, I wonder, for some other reason why they would pay? Why would somebody pay $100 million, not even have a contract? I don't know. I'll leave that up to your own imagination.
It's
But I
almost
would,
sometimes when we watch television or something or look online, it's someone who is an attorney or plays an attorney but never passed the bar.
well, he actually was a college dropout. Um, he, isn't that amazing?
That is
Uh,
amazing.
he did go to he did go actually to New York University, but dropped out after he was apparently very good at math, but still, so I'm not saying he's not a smart guy. Obviously,
Right.
a lot of people figured he must have been pretty smart to be able to do whatever they thought was good tax advice. But should he be compensated? Will the IRS? Oh, well, you know what was even weirder is after they had to sell a lot of his assets at a distressed value. So, for example, he had a townhome in New York for $90 million that he had to sell for 51 million because they were distress sales. I mean, I know that that's not still a lot.
Yeah.
So his estate went down from 600 million after paying all these bills to 33 to 40 million, which I know is still a lot.
Yeah.
But what was weird is because the IRS valued it 600 million, but when he sold it all these distress sales, the executors, they actually gave him his estate a refund of 112 million.
Wow.
But now I wonder,
Yeah.
will they investigate further if they do investigate further? And what's going to happen if the Epstein files are released or the birthday book? Not only could it have fallout, but on a lot of other people. Why would you pay so much to somebody that's beyond reasonable amounts? And why, IRS, did you not investigate this when you knew you had a known criminal, or at
Right.
least had been indicted before?
Right.
Well, anyway, that I'll leave that up. We'll find these things out, these questions out in the future. Stay tuned. Uh, so, uh, but why is that? Why is that? I'll leave that up to your imagination. Is somebody obligated for some reason? Well, I'm sure that this other shoe is going to drop in the future. Will the IRS say that there's now more money owed by the estate? Is there going to be other creditors? Possibly. Even after all this, most of the creditors have been paid. you know, then it still could be other creditors. Now, it, does it mean the fact that you signed a will or a trust 2 days before you die mean that's no good? No, not necessarily. I mean, people have death wishes and all the time and could sign, but in this case, it was pretty obviously he did it to defraud creditors.
Right.
And so it's a different story. In the longer you, I suppose if it had been lengthier and advanced, maybe it would have been helpful. But if you knew that there was creditors, then that wouldn't do any good. So at least I wouldn't think so. I think that it could be set aside as a fraudulent conveyance. So but certainly people could do it, and people use revocable living trust and pour over wills all the time. That's probably when people think of a trust, that's probably the first thing that they think of. Now there's all sorts of different types of trust, but that's probably the most common. And because you're in control, it's still taxed at your own individual rate. You have privacy. He called his the 1953 trust, which was the year of his birth.
Okay.
And so I always joke about different clients. Because a lot of times we say different names. What would you like to call your trust because of privacy? And one person said, "Oh, I'd like to call it the IMM trust." I said, "What does IMM stand for?" "It's my money."
Yeah, buddy.
And then I told another client, I said, I don't have that much money. I'm going to call it the What's Left Trust.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
IGN, I got nothing trust.
Yeah, I got nothing. You got nothing. I had a lady she very successful woman who's not been married, and has troubles with the opposite sex, so she calls it Stacy's Trust Issues Trust.
Trust. Funny.
So you can call it anything you want. Eh, and so that's what he did. He had it, and it's pretty, could see that it was basically, you could tell that was the year of his birth. But see, the only thing that you would know is if there was property deeded into the trust by him, but you don't know anything about that trust because it's private. So even the beneficiaries, we don't may not know for sure. Now he had a girlfriend and he had a brother in his case, so who are probably the beneficiaries, and some attorneys were co-executors but you might wonder that they might have any issues because if there was any co-conspiracy, if they were involved in helping him in any way, will those funds be subject to others? Possibly. Possibly. You shouldn't. Does crime pay? I don't know. We'll find out. Uh,
No. You think of the JFK files or the Jeffrey Epstein files, it's all going to come out eventually, someday, I hope, and then we'll know a little bit better who was
well, we
being
don't. It may be redacted.
yeah, exactly. Could be.
So we never know exactly what we'll see. But anyway, his mistakes were can't defraud creditors.
And that's the point. I mean, don't make mistakes. And this is what you've been teaching for decades now, and people should just realize. And the mistake is just not to attend your next workshop, which is coming up in December, January. And people should just call your number to find out when the next workshop is, so they can ascertain where they stand, what the laws are, that they have changed. Even in the last week, they've changed. It's just crazy with the government shutdown. Who did that affect? The new laws going into 2026, which is only 5 weeks away, et cetera, et cetera. So attend Michael's next workshop to get all of your questions answered.
Yeah, the laws change all the time. Remember, we talked about Medicare changes for those in Texas. We've talked about the one big beautiful bill. Here, we talked about recently, we talked about Medicaid laws. All these, a lot of different numbers change on the beginning of the year. So laws change all the time. Some we had property tax relief, but also in Collin County, you have the higher property taxation rate, so everything changes all the time. Laws don't stay the same.
No, they really don't. I even read that Collin County is the worst in Texas in terms of the worst, the highest percentage for property taxes in the whole
But,
state.
but they
Goodness.
were increasing the tax rate. So the good news is it depends on if you're a senior or not, because first 140,000, if you're a senior, maybe up to 200,000 on school district taxes might not be taxed. But The bad news if you're in Collin County is the tax rate will be increased.
Yes, I
So
think they want to build an airport in McKinney or somewhere
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
that, and
yeah.
therefore a third airport in Dallas. Goodness gracious! I don't know if it's going to be just commercial or passengers and these kinds of things, or both, but it's going to be expensive, and I guess McKinney wants to end up on the map or something.
Yeah.
So,
Well, everybody, yeah, everybody makes choices.
right,
So,
exactly,
yeah. So anyway, we always talk about, a lot of times people ask at the workshop, what are the new laws about this or that?
right.
So if you want to attend the free workshop, the next one, like we do them on a monthly basis, whenever you might hear this podcast, you could just call our office at 214-720-0102, 214-720-0102, or sign up online at dallaselderlawyer.com. That's dallaselderlawyer.com. We ask you what you want to know, and we'll just answer it. Every workshop's different. I thank y'all for coming, and I hope to see you soon.